Hello and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here as always. Today I have a discussion video for you guys because somebody posed a question to me at a time that was very important and I felt like it warranted a response that was a long format response instead of just like a half put together or a TikTok or something like that. I felt like it warranted long form response. And so that is what I am doing here today. I am giving my response to the question, what are the quintessential skills that make up game mastering? As in, what are the skills that you acquire while game mastering or need to acquire while game mastering to consider yourself a fully realized and actualized game master? Boy, howdy do, did this make me take a look at myself a little bit differently, a little bit more scrutinizing under a little bit more of a microscope to be like, what are the quintessential skills that I think every game master should have? And this is not an exhaustive list, but there are a couple of quintessential skills, of necessary skills for game mastering that come to mind whenever I thought about this more critically that I would love to express to you, and maybe we can have a discussion in the comments about what you think like necessary skills are. So, first and foremost, and I think the most important skill that a game master can have in any game at all is to know how to know but. Now, everybody knows what yes-anding is, and I think yes-anding is a very important skill for everybody to have because the next thing that I'm going to say is improv, of course, which is yes-anding. Yes-anding comes from improv. It is a skill in improv. However, no but is an incredibly important skill that I don't think enough dungeon masters and game masters utilize in your game. Your players, no matter who they are, no matter what they're doing, no matter what kind of person they are going to try to stretch the confines of the game you are playing. Whatever game you are playing has structure to it, whether it is a tiny amount of structure or a bunch of structure. That's crunchiness. That's actually what crunchiness is the structure. But no matter what, there is some sort of structure, if in the very least it's set in the 80s. So cell phones don't exist. If it's set in the 80s, if you're playing Monster of the Week and Monster of the Week is set in the 80s, Monster of the Week isn't a very crunchy game, but cell phones don't exist. So whenever your player goes, can I have a cell phone? Can I pull out a cell phone? You need to have the ability, you need to have the skills to know that cell phone, to know that bend of the structure, and then also include an alternative to the bend of the structure that is just as satisfactory. So if we're using the example of the cell phone, in Monster of the Week, that is a TTRPG that is set in the 80s. Well, 70s, 80s, 90s kind of era, but I set it in the 80s. And in the 80s, there weren't these high-power cell phones. So I wouldn't allow necessarily someone to have a high-power cell phone at their fingertips, but I would allow them to have, say, a computer in their van. A computer, or I would allow them to have access to a telephone somewhere. Like, you don't have a telephone, but you see a telephone on the diner counter. You know, I would ask them, what do they want of the cell phone? And then I would give them access to the thing that they want while keeping it within the confines of the structure of the game that you are playing. Saying no to your players is an inevitability. It's going to happen. So being able to say no to your players in a way that is constructive, in a way that helps further the narrative, in a way that helps build the players' confidence in like their ability to be creative and stuff, that is definitely a huge skill that I think is very, very important to not only D&D, but every TTRPG on the face of the planet. Just no but is what I call it, where you say no, but let's work together to try to find a place for what you are trying to accomplish. This is probably the most important skill that I would say that you can make as a dungeon master. It is probably the most essential skill that you can make as a dungeon master, but it's not the only skill. There is an in tandem one, which is yes and. According to Google, yes and is a fundamental rule and mindset in improvised comedy that has also been widely adopted into business and communication. The principle is two key parts. Yes, you accept what the other person has to offer or has started, and you build upon the idea or the sentiment by adding new information. That is yes anding in a nutshell. And yes anding is one of the more important things for you to be able to do, but everybody in the world knows about yes anding, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. I am just going to say that yes anding doesn't make you any less of a yes anding somebody else's idea doesn't make the world any less yours or make you any less in charge or any less of a DM. For some reason, there's this concept that I've run into with other dungeon masters in real life, not on the internet. I just met a dungeon master who was very much like, I hate improv, I hate yes and, because it makes me feel like I am out of control of the situation and that I am not able to steer people in the right direction. That's not really how you want to think about dungeon mastering. Dungeon mastering is a collaborative storytelling. D&D is a collaborative storytelling game. Most TTRPGs are collaborative storytelling games. Now, if you get into like 3.5, if you get into like Pathfinder, 1E, if you get into like Starfinder and stuff like that, maybe you can argue that that's not necessarily a collaborative storytelling game. And I'd be like, I can see where you're coming from. But for the most part, there is collaborative storytelling in every single TTRPG. And you're not supposed to have control over the narrative. The narrative is everyone's narrative. The story is everyone's story. The plot is everyone's plot. And if your players want to say fuck the plot and go do something else, they're allowed to say fuck the plot and go do something else. I literally just had someone, my Twitch channel, people tell me their stories from their D&D tables and we talk about them because it's fun. And so somebody told me about how their player character got put into the body of Tatiana, the Queen of the Fae's daughter, and Tatiana got mad at them and decided to some NPC's life that they really, really loved. So instead of doing the thing that they were supposed to do, which is like stopping demons from having a war or something like that, they're now going to go to the demons and ask the demons to war against Tatiana. And now there's going to be a demon-fae war. And like, listen, was that what the DM was expecting them to do? Probably not. Was he good and listened to what the players wanted and said this would be amazing? And decide to continue on with their story and yes-anding what they were deciding and what they were wanting to do? Yeah, and guess what? It sounds amazing. It sounds like so much fun. And now they're siding with the demons. And that's super cool. And it grows the story a lot better than just like railroad. If you want to railroad someone, play a video game. Go play Final Fantasy. This is not a game for that. This is a game for collaborative storytelling. This is a game for growing and building on one another. And hey, that's a good idea. Hey, I should steal that. I guess the big bad is over there now, and I'm gonna make the big bad randomly show up because they're being all pompous. Yes, anding is like such a quintessential part of dungeon mastering that you really can't go without it, and you really shouldn't be scared of it. You shouldn't be scared of improv. You shouldn't be scared of people going off the rail or going off the handle within the confines of the game. But you shouldn't be scared of people pushing boundaries, and you shouldn't be scared of sometimes bending those boundaries. So while I would say that those are the two most important pieces of being a dungeon master, is learning how to know but and learning how to yes and, I would say that there are other very, very essential pieces to dungeon mastering and game mastering in a whole that I think are very, very important. One of the things that I think is super important, that I think that every game master should be able to do, no matter what the game is, whether you're playing Monster of the Week, whether you're playing Pathfinder, whether you're playing Cyberpunk, whether you're playing any game, whatever. Monsters, or enemies, I should say. Enemies/monsters. You should be able to splice or come up with enemies/monsters off the top of your head. You should be able to give me 5 minutes, do a Google search of some things similar, splice stuff together, and create customized enemies. I have recently found out that I am very much lacking in this skill, which is why I'm putting it on the list, is to keep myself accountable. But splicing monsters and making monsters is a quintessential skill of game mastering in every single avenue that I can think of. Especially, and the reason why is the improv. Right? The reason why is because if you're improvising and you need an enemy now, you need to come up with that enemy. Even if you take 30 seconds, 5 minutes to come up with that enemy and think, I don't think anyone's gonna be upset with you for that. But you need to be able to dream up somebody to avert the players, distract the players. You know, you need to be able to have those. That's my cat. You need to be able to have those skills in place for whenever you need that distraction, whenever you need that entity, whenever you need that thing. Also, I just think in general that splicing monsters together, and making more and more customized monsters, especially whenever you've been playing D&D for 10 years like I have, it just keeps it a little bit fresh, it keeps it a little bit new, it keeps it a little bit moving and grooving. I definitely will say that big bads have always had customized sheets. I would stay away from making character sheets as big bads. I wouldn't, something that is a pit trap that I have fallen into whenever I was a younger DM, but you actually don't need all that stuff. You can very easily spice big monsters into what you need by just changing a few elements and like adding elements from other monsters. I'm telling you, you're gonna be splicing monsters way more than you think you are. You're gonna be creating custom monsters way more than you think you are. And I know it sounds silly. I know it sounds like, oh no, I'm never gonna have to do that. The monster manual is so vast. And then there's Vola's Guide to Monster. And then there's the Mordecai's Guide to Monsters. And then there's Spelljammer. And there's all this stuff. But I'm telling you, sometimes you cannot find the thing you're looking for. Sometimes you're going through the monsters and you're like, nobody has what I want. Nobody has what I want. And you're just gonna have to splice it. The number one thing that I can think of right now that I just spliced is a fire dog, a fire elemental dog, because I gave them a thermin of fire elemental summoning, and so they can summon and control a fire elemental right now. Well, I made it a dog. I made it like a wolf dog fire elemental. And so my players started expecting the stats of this dog to be more like dog and fire, like fire dog instead of like a fire elemental that looks like a dog. So I was like, I can do that. So I spliced together a wolf and a fire elemental, and my players are super duper happy with it, and I have a new monster. It's cool, right? Like, that's a lot of fun, right? And so I really think that it is important for us to be able to splice monsters so that we can keep our games fresh and happy. And also, sometimes you just need that specific guy at that specific moment, and you don't have the DMG in front of you, you don't have the monster manual in front of you, and you just gotta wing it. And like, that is another thing that is really, really important, is just like making monsters and just making monsters within the confines of what the party is at and what the party can handle. Because obviously everybody can make monsters that are overpowered and have all of these features and all of these stats and all this stuff and are CR23 and all that kind of stuff. Everybody can make those kind of monsters. Those are super fun monsters to make. The true test is to make CR10 monsters, is to make CR5 monsters. It's to make monsters that are still interesting and still unique, but don't have the abilities of a ancient black dragon. You know what I mean? That's where I think the splicing comes in, and that's where I think the skill set really, really shines, is whenever you restrain the skill set to just be the monsters that are usable. So those are my thoughts about what are quintessential GM skills. There are definitely more, especially around like antagonist and plot and stuff like that, but I think I'm going to end it here because this video is getting a little long. I super duper appreciate you guys being here. I super duper appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video. If you want to know my other ones, specifically around antagonists and how to make a good antagonist, I would super duper love to make that video. Let me know if you want that video. Other than that, I really appreciate you being here. I hope you check out my stuffs and my linkies down below. I did put out a loot letter this month. It is already out in time for spooky season, and it is spooky for spooky season. So if you want to check that out, the Substack will be down below. I appreciate you all for being here. I appreciate you for hanging out. You're amazing and wonderful. And, yep, okay.